My husband's secret affair was exposed at our baby shower. The fallout was drastic. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. At our baby shower, my husband's phone lit up on the projector. The room had been warm a second earlier. Pink paper lanterns, a diaper cake, the punch bowl sweating like it had nerves. But everything turned winter when the messages bloomed across the screen. "Can't wait for our countdown tonight," said a text from Jenna, a name I knew only as one of Jason's coworkers. "I'm Mia, 34 weeks, a librarian who catalogs chaos for a living. Dr. Patel tells me to protect my blood pressure like a fortress. Stress in the third trimester can tilt the whole world. My stakes are boring and holy. A small townhouse we saved for, a crib I sanded and painted, a folder of maternity leave paperwork with careful notes in the margins. Jason prides himself on managing optics, charming and unflappable at work events, the calm in the storm. I used to think that steadiness was a gift. I watch Aunt Rosa reach for me, one hand on my elbow, the other lowering me into a chair. Lena steps in front of the screen, but the mirrored messages keep advancing, like a long line of ants carrying something rotten. My name banner, MIA and baby, hangs crooked now. Someone says, "Is that a hotel room?" And Jason lunges for the cable. My heart counts like a metronome, steady and loud, as another message arrives. He yanks the HDMI, and the projector shifts to blue, then black. "I can explain," he says, lips barely moving. "It's not what it looks like." My breath is a straw. I draw through it slowly. "Turn the music back on," his mother says brightly, like volume can stitch fabric. I look at the blank screen and picture all the words still living inside. If one more text had landed, the room would have read it out loud. I reach for my water, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jason leans close, whispering, "Please, not here, not now. Think about the baby." I stare at him and understand I am standing on a cliff. I lifted the phone from his pocket because no one would hand me the truth. We met 3 years ago in the quietest aisle, biographies with cracked spines and forgiving margins. Jason had asked where to find memoirs that don't whine, and I laughed because he seemed like the kind of man who didn't believe in whining. He courted me in simple, careful ways: coffee after my Saturday shift, walks around the park, a habit of listening with his whole face. Later I learned he also curated which parts of himself I could see. If a cashier was slow, he told a charming story. If I worried about money, he told me I was resourceful. It felt like kindness. When I got pregnant, he created a shared calendar labeled Our Future and filled it with neatly color-coded plans. It was a museum of good intentions. The hairline cracks were small. "Babe, let me handle the registry, it photographs better," or "You're overthinking the stroller brand. Let's just go with what influencers use." I told myself he was excited. Last week, when I cried in the car after an appointment, he touched my shoulder and said, "You're a little overly emotional lately." It landed like a coin in a jar I didn't know I was filling. Aunt Rosa once told me, "Control can look like care until the bill arrives." Lena never liked how he skimmed past apologies like skipping stones. I remember him deleting a photo because my shirt wrinkled wrong. He called it editing our story, and I pretended that was romantic. I had loved the way he smoothed chaos until I noticed costs. Costs were privacy, mess, and permission to be complicated in public. He loved a clean line on a wall and a clean life on paper. Sometimes I felt like he was staging us for a home magazine. He said, "Trust me," and I did, right up until the slideshow. Now trust feels like a book I mis-shelved and can't locate. I kept replaying his overly emotional jab and hearing a rehearsal for blame. The first red flags were receipts that didn't match his explanations, but they came disguised as adult life. Work dinners that overlapped with our grocery list, a duplicate rideshare charge at 11:07 p.m. to a hotel near the river, a gift bag in our hall closet with a lipstick stain on the tissue, and a card addressed to Jay. "Congratulations on your promotion. His name is Jason, my name is Mia, and I don't know any other Jay who would be getting congratulated using our home address." I told myself the bag was a mix-up. Maybe a neighbor's courier got confused. I told myself the rideshare duplicated because apps glitch. I told myself the calendar overlaps were just the way projects crest before launch. Then came the late-night doubts, when the house sounded like it held its breath. I am a librarian. I know how to follow a breadcrumb without disturbing the nest. I started a small notebook with date lines, the kind I use for reference questions. March 12th, 7:42 p.m., Marriott receipt, coat lining. March 18th, 11:07 p.m., rideshare duplicate. March 20th, 4:15 p.m., lipstick tissue, hall closet. Do I sound crazy? I asked Lena over tea, and she didn't blink. You sound like a person who can count, she said, flipping pages. Jason's laugh got louder when I asked soft questions about schedules. He hugged me longer, kissed my forehead, smelled like eucalyptus and hotel soap. Aunt Rosa said, write it down, not to punish, to remember clearly. So I wrote down the part where he promised to be early Friday, and the part where he arrived late with a fresh driver's wristband. He said the meeting ran long, like meetings are wild horses. I nodded, but my pen wrote 11:07 p.m. Again, without my permission. The notebook's spine started creasing like my patience. I decided the next piece of proof would tell me whether to confront. Escalation arrived the way weather does, suddenly obvious. At a family brunch, he told his mother I had paranoid pregnancy brain, a sentence that folded me into something small in front of people who loved me. I watched his mother purse her lips in sympathy I didn't want, and I folded my napkin in half, then half again. That afternoon, Lena sat beside me on our couch and scrolled through the shared cloud album Jason had convinced us to use for the shower. Look, she said, and held up her phone. A thumbnail from a hotel room. The kind of beige that only exists where they want no one to notice things. The timestamp overlapped with a night he had claimed to be at the gym. Maybe it's a stock photo, I said, ridiculous even to my own ears. Jason came home humming, tossed keys in a perfect arc into the bowl, and kissed the top of my head as if the day had been gentle. We're okay, right? He asked, tone managerial and soothing. I asked why the cloud album had a hotel shot. He said it was for a joke slide, then said I was reaching, then said I needed sleep. Lena's eyebrows climbed, and later she muttered, jokes require a punchline. He added more to the shower plan, controlling the volunteer slideshow team. I watched him smile wide at details as if smiles were spackle. Trust me, he said again, installing trust like an app on my phone. I pictured passwords I didn't know, folders I couldn't see, doors locked. I pictured me, at a lectern, explaining myself to people with nods. Protect the baby, Aunt Rosa whispered, squeezing my hand. Protection includes truth. Protecting is also not detonating your body with a preventable shock. I breathed and told myself we could talk after the party. Then the florist called about peonies for someone named Jay. I wrote the florist's number down because the notebook had become a map. Allies and pushback arrived in pairs, like shoes I had to choose between. Aunt Rosa's voice was soft enough to hear and strong enough to lean on. Calm doesn't mean silence, she said as she buttered toast like it was surgery. Calm means you gather what you need. Lena, less gentle, said, freeze the joint account. Not forever, just a boundary. She wasn't wrong. Jason's mother called to say we should focus on the baby and avoid anything that might raise your blood pressure, which felt like she was asking me to wrap the lie in a blanket and rock it. I moved $1,200 into a separate savings account, the amount I would need if I had to get a crib and groceries alone next month. I felt disloyal to the dream I had embroidered on onesies. I also felt like a mother. When Jason noticed, he asked, light, budgeting practice? And I said yes because practice is also preparation. He started offering to handle the slideshow, the gifts, the playlist, everything that touches a spotlight. He texted me photos of pastel cupcakes and called it teamwork. I answered with thumbs up because a fight felt like an earthquake. At night I read about paternity tests, their timing, their safety. I hated myself for reading. I loved the baby for existing anyway. Aunt Rosa told me she would sit near me at the shower. Lena said she'd sit at the projector, just in case wires misbehave. Jason's mother sent me a link to guided meditations for forgiveness. I wrote down the login for our cloud album and changed nothing. I wrote down the florist again and circled the day peonies were sent. I listened to the house breathe and waited for the bill to arrive. I decided my evidence journal would either save us or save me. Suspicion didn't ignite. It clicked, like a watch waking up. Jason's smartwatch mirrored messages from his phone, and on Tuesday, when he reached past me for the cereal, a name stripe flashed. Jenna, you owe me sunset. He spun his wrist like a magician hiding a coin. I smiled and poured milk with librarian slowness. Later that day, the florist called back, cheerful and efficient. Just confirming next week's anniversary peonies for Jenna. Same card style? I stood beside the returns cart, surrounded by books about infant sleep in car seats, and said, "Wrong number," then wrote everything down. That night, I began the journal in earnest. Times, dates, amounts, where I found them. I described the photo angles and what brands of hotel shampoo were visible. I stapled a copy of a $178 dinner receipt to the page and noted that my prenatal yoga ended at the same minute his rideshare arrived at the river. I felt grim and methodical, like the me who finds the needle when the haystack thinks it's clever. "Mia, you're distant," Jason said, mouth gentle, eyes measuring. "Pregnancy is a lot," I said, and let the sentence be a door. He pressed his forehead to mine as if to take my temperature. "I want us to be good on Saturday," he whispered, "for everyone." He loves the word everyone. It collects strangers and reputation politely. I replied, "I want to be good for the baby," and watched him blink. Lena texted, "Back up the album. Don't let him control the narrative." I created a copy and named it Decor Ideas, then hid it plainly. Aunt Rosa reminded me to pack my hospital bag early, just in case. I zipped tiny socks into a pocket and breathed like a metronome. I realized the shower might be the safest or the worst place. The breadcrumb trail widened into something a stroller could roll across. In Jason's blazer pocket, I found a valet stub from the same hotel, dated the week he claimed late meetings, with a time that overlaps neatly with a photo from a private Instagram Lena uncovered. The account followed exactly 12 people and had locked captions, but geotags still showed. Riverfront, corner suite, once a wine bar I'd never been to. Jason's calendar had client huddle 8 to 10 typed 3 times in the last month, and each instance matched a rideshare near the same block. I pasted snapshots of the timestamps into my journal, then sat at the kitchen table and counted the overlaps like I was matching call numbers. I printed our bank statements, highlighted Marriott, Lyft, Cork and Stem, Peony Lane, and felt my baby roll under my palm like the only true thing in the world. "Why are we printing statements?" Jason asked, eyes flitting like swallows. "Budgeting practice," I repeated, and he smiled as if budgets were flattery. Lena interviewed the shower MC about the slideshow timing and file sources. "Laptop runs to HDMI," the MC said. "We'll mirror from Jason's machine." "Maybe mirror from mine," Lena suggested, casual as a cat near a vase. Jason insisted his laptop had the surprise video. "Then share it," I said, and he said, "Later," like later is a vault. I checked the private Instagram at midnight and saw a new geotag. It was the baby store where we'd argued about stroller prices. The caption, "Locked," still let a heart emoji hang like a hook. I understood the joke slide might not be a joke at all. The mini twist was the plainest sentence I have ever read. Jenna. Not a handle, not a code, but a contact name on Jason's iMessage because sometimes arrogance wears simplicity. Lena recognized her from a quarterly meeting photo, standing 2 rows behind him in a navy dress. "Coworker," Lena said, and even the word felt like grit. The stakes stretched their legs. The baby shower game vendor, the woman managing the guess the due date cards, turned out to be Jenna's cousin. Her last name matched an invoice on our dining table. My breath went shallow. The party was a web already spun. The slideshow would air from Jason's laptop, the same machine with the cloud sync he loved and believed he controlled. I looked at my nursery, the soft green wall we chose together, and felt the paint turn into a set. I wasn't hunting motives anymore. I had the noun, not the why. It was enough to move money quietly, print copies, and file numbers under my pillow like talismans. Jason practiced a toast in the bathroom, voice rising and falling. Grateful, humbled, excited. He said into the mirror as if practicing sincerity. I stood on the hall rug and counted the beats he left for applause. Aunt Rosa texted, "I will sit beside you. We will breathe together." Lena texted, "If the screen betrays you, let it finish the sentence." I packed my ID, insurance card, and the journal, labeled Baby. I wondered if timing could save dignity or whether truth owes no schedule. Jason kissed my forehead and said, "Tomorrow is about joy, please." "Then let it be honest joy," I said, and he looked past me. He asked whether we could skip the slideshow if I felt tired. I told him the slideshow would play because lies hate daylight most. The plan was not revenge, it was scaffolding. I moved a small emergency fund into a separate high-yield account with my name only, changed nothing else, and photographed the balances. I called a legal aid clinic to ask 3 questions: timelines, housing, and how to document without inflaming. The woman on the phone spoke gently about screenshots and chain of custody, like she was guiding me through a storm with streetlights. I set boundaries for the shower: short speeches, no alcohol near me, chairs for resting. I told Jason I wanted the playlist in advance, and he sent it, tidy and cheerful, and buried between tracks was the surprise video file that would only open with his password. "We'll do it live," he said. "Trust me." I wrote down his trust requests in a column. Opposite, I wrote down facts: dates, times, places, the florist, the watch mirror, the private Instagram. The 2 columns were not friends. Lena asked, "Confront before or after?" And I said, "After, if possible." "Unless the room does it for you," she said, hand on my shoulder. Aunt Rosa packed almonds and a cold pack in her purse for me. Jason printed guest cards with our names, clean fonts, and rounded corners. His mother called again, full of lemon tea and optimism. "I don't want drama," I said, and meant it like a prayer. Drama is for theater. I needed decisions and measured breaths. I laid a blue blanket over the rocking chair and timed contractions of fear. Every 30 minutes, a thought hit. What if paternity isn't guaranteed? Then I folded that thought into the pocket with the hospital wristbands. I decided that if truth erupted, I would not apologize for the noise. The close call came the night before, when Jason slid into tenderness like a familiar coat. He cooked pasta, oversalted exactly the way he likes, and says "I love," and cued soft music. He presented a foot rub like an offering to a saint, and his eyes were glassy with intent. "I want you to feel adored," he said, and the word felt like a stage light. After dinner, he suggested we test the projector to avoid technical issues tomorrow, and he reached for my laptop. "Let's just use mine," I said, calm as a librarian asking for silence. "Yours has the surprise," he replied, a small smile with edges. He tried to move the HDMI to his machine, his hands casual, but I saw the tangle of cables like a mouth full of secrets. "We'll test in the morning," I said. He put his hands on my belly and whispered to the baby about patience, and my throat tightened. Aunt Rosa called then. "A coincidence, I bless. Sleep now. Your body is not a courtroom." Jason's text pinged while he showered. His watch flashed J and a heart. I inhaled, exhaled, and turned off the watch display with shaking fingers. I almost caved and asked for the password, begged for a safe lie. But I pictured the hotel beige, and I chose the chair instead. Lena messaged, "I'll sit near Tech. You sit near Rosa." We breathe. I fell asleep counting baby kicks and exit signs. In the morning, Jason whistled and packed his laptop with ceremony. He kissed my cheek and said, "Let's show them how happy we are." My baby turned once, twice, like it knew the weather pattern. I put the journal in my tote, between diapers and granola bars. I promised myself I would not step between truth and its microphone. The trap wasn't mine. It was born from convenience and arrogance. The community center tech had a simple rule: mirror the laptop to HDMI, then toggle audio. Jason handed over his machine like a man presenting a ring, and the MC nodded, tapped, and smiled as the slideshow began. Pastel confetti floated across photos of our first ultrasound, kindergarten pictures of me and Jason, a montage of friends holding onesies. Then the Wi-Fi blipped. The MC reached for the settings, clicked mirror all displays, and Jason's messages arm wrestled for the spotlight and won. A preview window popped open like a mouth. The room fell into a gasp so synchronized it could have been rehearsed. 2 hours to go, Riverview, bring the blue shirt, read the top thread, blinking as if cheerful. Then a photo. Jenna in a mirror, hand on her stomach, captioned, "Countdown to your due date, Jay." Silence filled every chair. Jason said, "That's a prank." But his voice forgot how to be smooth. Lena's hand settled on my shoulder. Aunt Rosa's other hand found my wrist. My mother-in-law stood, her smile a plastic bag caught in wind. The MC fumbled for escape. The projector obeyed no one. A second photo arrived. Hotel selfie, same beige, same grin. Jason lunged and tore the HDMI, but the image had already landed. I could hear the punch bowl sweat even from across the room. Someone whispered, "Jenna from accounting?" And someone else whispered, "Oh my God." Jason looked at me like I was the problem and not the proof. He whispered, "Please," and I answered, "No," before I even knew my voice. The big reveal became a volley. "You hacked me," he said, while I sat anchored in a folding chair and breathed like I had been practicing. "It's AI," he added, absurd and flailing, and the cousin running games paled like chalk. "Jason," Lena said, low and firm. "The timestamps match Marriott and lift and cork and stem." I opened my tote and pulled the journal free. March 12th. I read, my voice steady. March 18th. March 20th. The florist called twice. Your watch mirrored messages while you reached for cereal. He pointed at my stomach. "You're stressing the baby," he said, as if blame could reroute oxygen. "You did this in front of everyone," I said. "You brought it to the screen." He reached for the narrative again. "We were on a break," he tried, and a laugh bubbled from someone who couldn't hold it back. The gift table held a card addressed to Jay, "You make waiting sweet," signed with a pet name I do not own. Countdown to due date glowed like neon over our cake. My mother-in-law said, "Let's pray." And I almost smiled at the timing. Aunt Rosa whispered, "In through the nose, out through the mouth." I showed him the bank highlights, the rideshare duplicates, the peonies. He swatted at facts like flies. "Work stress," he said. "Lonely," he said. "You were distant," he said. I blinked, and the room came into focus like shelves after lights on. "It stops now," I said, "or I leave today with the tote." He watched the tote like it contained the detonator. Lena stepped between us and tipped her chin at the door. He asked, "Are you really doing this?" And I said, "I already did." Fallout isn't cinematic. It's forms and phone calls and quiet. Guests split into groups. Those who stared at the floor, those who hugged me, those who followed Jason outside as if spin could be oxygen. I sat, sipped water, and counted breaths to 10, then 14, then back to 10. The MC apologized with a tremor in her hands. "The setting mirrored everything," she said, and I wanted to thank her for not hiding the verb. I asked Aunt Rosa to take me to the restroom, where I washed my face and saw a woman who could shelve disaster without breaking the spine. Legal steps began small. I emailed the clinic to move my appointment. I downloaded an intake packet from a family lawyer who offered sliding scale consultations. I wrote to HR, because if Jenna is a direct report, that changes things for employment policy. I took photographs of my journal pages and saved them to a cloud account he cannot reach. I slept at Aunt Rosa's that night, on sheets that smelled like starch and lemon, and woke to the baby hiccuping against my palm. Jason texted 21 times between midnight and dawn. "Call me, we can fix this, for the baby, please." At 6:14 a.m., he wrote, "I'll resign if that helps." At 7:22, he wrote, "If you leave, you'll blow up our lives." Aunt Rosa made oatmeal like a sacrament and set out blueberries. Lena sent me a list of therapists who take my insurance. I told work I needed a few days, and they said yes, no questions. I cataloged everything: apologies, threats, bargains, silences. Dr. Patel's nurse called to check on my blood pressure. It held. The townhouse looked like a set when I returned for clothes. I found a second phone in his gym bag and turned it off gently. Healing and boundaries are not rivals. They stand back to back. I told Jason we would separate for now. He could stay with a friend while I kept the townhouse, or vice versa, but I would not share a bed or a calendar. He cried with the energy of a performance and then quieted when I handed him a one-page list of conditions: transparency, therapy, paternity test if doubts remained, no access to my medical portal, and zero contact with Jenna outside HR channels. He said the list was cold. I said it was warm with mercy compared to the alternative. We scheduled counseling with someone neutral who knows how to speak to people who clutch reputation like a passport. I bought a small safe for documents and tucked my journal inside, then set routines: morning walks, lunch on time, a nightly phone call with Lena even if we only traded grocery lists. I filled the nursery with small, ordinary tasks: folding onesies, aligning books I love. The room stopped being a set. It became a place again. Jason sent a photo of an appointment confirmation with a therapist. He asked if he could attend the ultrasound next week. I said yes. and also that boundaries are not a trapdoor to forgiveness. He nodded, and I watched him learn the shape of consequence. HR began their process. They asked for dates and nothing messy. I gave them only what belongs to the workplace, not my private grief. Dr. Patel scheduled a paternity test for after delivery if desired. I breathed easier knowing choice could be postponed without panic. Aunt Rosa took me to buy a plant for the nursery window. The leaves lifted in the afternoon light like hands that understand. I told Jason that love without trust is performance, and he finally stopped smiling. Reflection is a slow library. You have to walk the stacks. I learned that documentation isn't petty. It's a lifeline when stories try to tilt. I learned that community isn't crowd control. It's people who stand between you and harm without needing a script. I learned that calm is a choice, not a muzzle. The baby moves like a small tide, reliable and tender, and I talked to them about libraries and quiet bravery. I kept one photo from the shower. Lena's hand on my shoulder, Aunt Rose's hand on my wrist, my face not broken but sharpened. I don't know if we will reconcile. I do know I will not trade my peace for optics again. For anyone watching who wonders if evidence makes you cruel, I offer this. Clarity is the softest landing you can give a future. The nursery catches dawn like a cup. I run a hand over the rocking chair and think of names that feel like strength and kindness at once. Here is my practical takeaway. Protect your health, document your truth, and let daylight do the rest.